82, or hit us up on our Facebook page at PFM 87.6 for any birthday shout out. So if you can just share on that and those 4 pointers that we learned.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Tony, for even just allowing the conversation to happen. And, so oftentimes we are faced with the fact that we need to start asking questions, and so many people have identified, that they have an issue with this. And one of my convictions has always been that I'm only willing to speak about it if you're willing to do something about it. So it's all good and well to have the conversation, but I find it very aggravating when we're just talking things through, but then the person speaking, referring to myself or the person in the conversation, is not willing to be a part of the process of that conversation. So we've identified things, and with the things you're making reference to, the 4 dynamics, and I really love it because, as you said, if I like to make reference to cell phones. I mean, if cell phones are getting improved, getting software updates, getting upgraded, technology has this culture of continuous renovation, innovation. And now there's a demand for us as humanity. It's not a new demand, but it's just the nature of the beast. It's the nature of life that you're required to be able to move with the times, as we can say it clumsily. And the 4 things that they basically put us to task to, in this 4th industrial revolution, is to basically say, listen, John, Tony, whoever you are, it's a basic requirement for you to be able to think critically. And thinking critically is not taking it personal. It's not. When I say not taking it personal, that in the sense of, can you be objective about it and not just subjective of how it makes you feel, or fighting the fruit and not dealing with the root. And so you need to be able to discern and use discernment that God has given you to be able to empower yourself to think critically. And the second thing they make mention of is we need to be able to think creatively, and many people are having thoughts, but not everyone is having creative thoughts. And creativity is being able to work around diversity, is being able to work around dynamics. That is the creativity. It's built into any human race, any human being. You have a built-in capacity to be creative. And then the third thing they make mention of is then how to then be able to communicate yourself or your message or your question effectively. Many times we ask or we challenge to be able to become more and more effective. And the only way you can become effective is that when you start looking at where you are and where you ideally would like to be. And unless you ask the questions that's relevant to how to identify and assess, okay, where am I at this point in time, or where are we as a people, or where are we as an organization, or where are we as a family? We need to make those assessments, and I think that conversation is a very seldom one. We almost considered reactive people and not as responsive people. So we are more reactive than proactive. And then the 4th thing that I identified was effective interacting. These are skills that you don't often find in a textbook, and it's almost like someone has to be very, very intentional about bringing this skill to your attention, to intentionally put you in the deep end, to intentionally put you in uncomfortable positions and situations where you can then develop yourself and interact effectively. I was taught, working in one of the biggest, corporate companies that deals with financial investments, and they made this rule of thumb. You're not allowed, as when you're networking, you're not allowed to speak about 3 dynamics. And they gave us a principle that we worked with, and they said, if you can avoid 3 topics, and I'll make reference of it now, but there's 4 that really stuck with me, and it says, and it gave me such an effective way to interact, and it would make mention of this whenever engaging in any networking environment. Promote the fact you need to speak about the person's family or education or occupation or recreation. But the moment you go off into when someone's having a tantrum about how you feel about this and that, the other, you don't effectively communicate with the other person and allow the other person to engage you But now when you work from a place of how does this first person enjoy, or how does this person spend their luxury time or their spare time? What do they do for recreation? What do they do in their occupation? What do they do? What do they study? How is their family dynamic? And people are fond of speaking of these things, and that's a way to effectively communicate, especially when it's a first engagement, a first encounter. It's not your right. You might have freedom of speech, but it's not a right for you to go and they used to call it Bible bashing, or they would say, it's not, I don't know how to put this, but you can have freedom of speech, but there's a certain boundary, there's a certain level of respect that you cannot just become invasive and integrate the person on a very, very personal, platform about what they believe and how they see the world, but rather keep it and build the trust, and through building the trust, you can effectively communicate and become a person of influence.
Awesome. We're considering the conversation significant.